So I think I'm going to get started, and hopefully most of you have joined by now this webinar, and we'll get started. So I just want to introduce myself. My name is Len Dykstra, and I'm a social worker here at Niagara North Family Health Team, and I want to thank you for participating this afternoon in this webinar. And my hope is that there is something or several things that are going to be helpful to you as we go through this pandemic together. So that's my goal, is that there will be some very, very helpful things for you. I'm going to ask you to keep your questions to the very end of the presentation. We're going to go for 45, 50 minutes with me speaking and sharing some thoughts and ideas, and then at the very end, if you can send your questions in, and Heather, our IT person, will take the questions. Otherwise, you could be sending a lot of messages and you're not getting a response. So if you could do that, that'd be wonderful. So we're here to talk about pandemic fatigue. On Friday, April the 16th, we, in full course of the third wave and the restrictions that came down, it was like we heard a big thud in Ontario. And many of us already were experiencing, perhaps most of us already, some pandemic fatigue. It seemed to come with what I call a loud thud that day. And hence our decision to present you this material today, because we see people really struggling on a day-to-day basis, both personally and professionally. I'm not sure if there's an official definition of pandemic fatigue, but what we know about pandemic fatigue is what we've been hearing and observing in the last several weeks, months, and a year, and it's been quite the year. The pandemic fatigue symptoms seem to include some of the following, and perhaps you have experienced some or all of them, or one time or currently. And they may be fear, anxiety, sadness, some stress, exhaustion, anger, frustration, depression, grief, which is huge for many people, and loss, tiredness, a sense of hopelessness, and perhaps other symptoms. Some of the language that's popped up in the last couple of days on an article I read in the New York Times is a time of languishing, which is an interesting kind of a concept, sort of an anguish. Kind of feels like we are on hold, we are waiting for this to be over. All these symptoms are normal responses to a life crisis, either in our personal or in our country or in the world. These are normal and these are natural responses to crises. Even though it doesn't feel like it, they are. When we are facing difficult times in our personal lives, in our country, in the world, this is what we're going to feel. And we do live in difficult times. Many of you have had some very difficult times, or you're currently experiencing some difficult times. And as a social worker, I've heard many of these stories, and many of you have heard other stories. And this is a difficult period that we are in right now in the world. People often say to me, this sucks, or it's tough, and I don't disagree with that. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. People often say we're all in the same boat. And I tend to look at it much more as we're all in the same storm. But the storm is much bigger in the middle of the ocean for some of us than in a tiny harbor or a protective cove. The storm also has different intensity. We're in the same storm, but we're in different boats in this storm. Some in fishing boats, some in canoes, some in freighters, and some in luxury yachts. It really varies. It's not all equal, and we're not all experiencing this pandemic the same either. What is the same, it seems to be, is that the fatigue that comes with this pandemic. Many of us last April were thinking this would be over by June, or perhaps by September, never by Christmas, and perhaps the new year would give us a brand new start. And now we're in the third wave, and we got the new concerns daily. I often use this metaphor when talking about the pandemic. It's like running a marathon, and you've been preparing yourself for the last number of months and perhaps the last year, but someone keeps moving the finish line, and it gets pushed another 20 kilometers away. And then when you get to that finish line, there's another 20 kilometers, and that's how it keeps going. And on a marathon, how do you get your second wind or your third wind? And that's what we're trying to achieve, is how do we keep going? How do we get that second or third wind? Perhaps we've run out of wind. Many people say to me, I'm just not feeling very happy these days. True, it's hard to be happy these days, but perhaps that's not what we should be striving for at this point, even though it's something we've been conditioned to in North America for 50, 60 years, maybe longer, that perhaps we should be striving for some emotional calm and stability, about balancing and carrying our struggles and difficulties and trying to do that calmly. Psychologist Richard Tedeschi talks about being vulnerable and strong at the same time. And I think that's what we're trying to achieve. That's what my presentation today is trying to get you to achieve, to be strong and vulnerable at the same time. So now what? What do I do? What do we do? All the research shows when it's looking at crisis or trauma or calamity is how people manage on a crisis on a small or large scale. It's all about three different things. And perhaps you have a pen that you can write these down. It's adapting, accepting, and adjusting. So that's adapting, accepting, and adjusting. Another word that's often used is resilience. And so how do we adapt to this challenge? How do we accept this challenge? And how do we adjust? The foundation of all of this seems to be, if you're looking at bottom line, what's in your control? What is in your control? What is not? What is in your control? What is not? Try to simplify that on a daily basis. A or B, in my control, out of my control. Yep, nope. For example, what can I do about what happened yesterday in Toronto? In my control, out of my control. What can I do about the people being on the beaches in Florida? In my control, out of my control. What can I do about being safe? In my control, out of my control. What can I do if it snows tomorrow? In my control, out of my control. A few examples to help you look at that. Also, it comes down to a choice, and I borrow this from acceptance and commitment therapy, but many other therapies as well. What's our choice? What helps me cope and manage and grow and be stable? What does not help? What helps? What does not? What does not help? What is my choice? Often I say to people, try to keep this simple, because it's easy to move this into a very, very complicated for ourselves, even though it's not simple. It's not simple. How we react, how we cope, what helps, what does not help, what's in my control, what's not in my control. Be aware and deliberate about the choices you make. all day long. From the time you get up in the morning to the time you go to bed at night. And some of that is some core principles, or often even in this, if we're using the storm analogy, it's also some anchors to help you in this storm. Practice good self-care. This has got to be one of your core values. Or often now it's called self-compassion, which I really like that language as well, but either one. It's more than just stress management tips and strategies. It's a very deliberate way to being well. And it's a deliberate plan about being well. It's about being aware of your automatic thoughts, your automatic actions, and your automatic reactions. It's about stepping back, pausing, looking in, and then stepping forward again. It's about adapting, adjusting, and accepting. When we learn to self-care, to be as good as we can to ourselves, we will help other people as well and benefit them. Back to the pandemic fatigue symptoms that I talked about earlier. The goal is not to bury those or ignore them. This is difficult times. We all know it. If I would ask you, each of you, and I ask people in this office today, even in my own life, there are difficult times. There are things that we cannot do right now. I'm sad that I can't see my kids right now. Some of you may be upset that the pandemic continues for so long. Others may miss hugs or social connected. Others may miss coffee. Others may miss their loved ones on many, many different things of loss and grief. Acknowledge these thoughts, acknowledge them. There's one of the authors, I can't remember the specific name, says bear witness to them. So don't bury them, don't sweep them under the rug. Bear witness to them, hold them, describe them. Just don't stay there. What's good for me? What's not? Just don't stay there. Many people stay there. That's all they stay. They stay there and they don't move forward. And it's an old adage, but one that I like a lot. It says, it's take one day at a time. Many people will skip months down the road, and I often go, I don't know whether that's going to be good for you or not, whether you should skip to 6 months from now or 8 months. We have to have some idea for the future, but really, if you can, take one day at a time. It's an older expression and an adage that, but I believe it stands the test of time. One day at a time. For some of you, half a day at a time. For some, a moment at this time right now. And try not to go too far down the road. We don't know what that's going to look like, and it may absolutely put us into an emotional spiral or emotional turbine. Be as much as you can in the present time, in the present moment. Next point, start your day off wisely. That's again, take one day at a time, but also this is at the beginning of your day. Start it off very wisely. The old expression they used to say is, did you wake up on the wrong side of the bed? Some of you may remember that. Some may have been told that. So this is trying to wake up on the right side of the bed and start your day off fresh, healthy, well, and focused. So come up with a plan for the fresh start. I believe very much that we need to look at fresh starts every day. We're fortunate enough as human beings, we can set that for ourselves, is to say, well, I got a fresh start today and a new start today. What helps us to have a good day? To accept, adapt, and adjust. What helps? Accept, adapt, adjust. What does not help us? Does dreading the day help? The beginning of the morning, does it help you or not? Does watching CP24 news at 7 a.m. help? And I'm not trying to pick on CP24, but newsflash is that many times we may be starting our day completely traumatized and overwhelmed at 7 a.m. with the need to know. And I see many, many people, one of my recommendations often is for people to limit the news. I've done that myself. I don't ignore the news, but I limit. For some people, they have the news on as background noise, interesting choice, all day long, or they're getting news feeds all day long on their cell phones or their computers. And I believe if it's helpful for you, that's one thing. But for many, many people, it is really reducing their news content. How much news is too much news? What helps you adapt, accept, adjust, what does not? Does stretching exercise in the morning, sort of emotional stretching and physical stretching in the morning, help you? Does meditating in a specific chair help you? Does calling your Aunt Edna help you? Depends on Aunt Edna. Does sitting quietly having my tea or a coffee outside help me start the day? Do I wake up before, for some of you with children at home who are homeschooling or schooling online and trying to work, perhaps waking up a few minutes before everybody else and having some time for yourself to fresh start your day? The other thing is a big thing when there's so much going on in our heads and bouncing around in our feelings and our thoughts is to move your body. That's basically what I call it. Keep moving. We think we're going to figure some things out by thinking about it, processing it all the time, and there's going to be limits to that. Big thing is keep moving, keep physically active as much as you are able. The research has shown over and over again that physical activity and exercise has just so many multiple benefits. Provides necessary oxygen to your brain, your heart, and the rest of your body. It can lift your spirits and your mood, boost your confidence and your energy. Move. It makes you smarter, it makes you happier, it makes you more positive. It's really a key of being resilient and adaptive is keep moving. And it actually is a distraction. Activity can range, and this is a wide range, and you need to come up with many of these yourself, from doing yard work, housework, walking. We can still walk. Many times people focus on what they can't do and try to focus on what you can do. Jog, you can do yoga, you can do swimming. Move. Start off with small steps to be successful and get some of those endorphins going. They're going to help you feel good. Don't forget the benefits of regular stretching as well. So some people, I have many people who I work with who have physical limitations, and so I still encourage to keep people keep moving, even with their limitations, and doing that in tandem with their physician or their physiotherapist, but keep moving. It's often called the fountain of youth, and I would say that to some degree is a fountain of youth for us during a pandemic as well. Positive people, they're very good for you. So their social support really shows over and over again how good it is for us as human beings. And unfortunately, during this pandemic, we are often very disconnected from as much as we would like to be, but social support. So encourage you to keep contact online or in person, in sort of I'll now call it in person on FaceTime, but it's not in person, but FaceTime and other ways of connecting with people. Understand right now that many other people are also struggling. So some of the most positive people in your life may also be struggling with this pandemic fatigue. And so what the dilemma has become is that often everybody's tired, and everybody's tired of supporting other tired people. What I try to do, encourage people to do, is if you're going to be around other people who are positive support, talk about the pandemic and acknowledge the difficulty. Like I said at the very beginning of this presentation, acknowledge the dilemma, but then after 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes, talking about things that are going well. So tell me, I'll give you some examples. Tell me about your plans for your garden. Share with me the book that you're reading and what you recommend. Let's talk about the Leafs. Well, maybe that may not be helpful, but anyhow, right now, or the Blue Jays. Let's talk about the new craft project that you're working on or the woodworking project. Let's talk about something else. Not that we want to ignore. We're going to talk about the support and rally around each other, but we're not going to make that the only thing that we do. Be very, very careful about people who want to drag you down. Because there's going to be people there. Your sole purpose is for them to vent to you. So I talk about Aunt Edna. You call her in the morning. Some people have, they talk to their Aunt Edna because she's lonely and stuff, but she spends 2 hours venting to you. You are now absorbing all her stress. And you may have other people like that. You want to be kind and nice, but you are now absorbing that stress. Or maybe that you need to be assertive and say, let's do 10 minutes or 5 minutes or every other day. But really, some of you are going to absorb that more than others. So back to positive people, they're good for your health. Sometimes the sky is falling people, they may not be the best for you. Meditate. Lots of positive research and regarding meditation these days. And today, for today's purposes, I'm going to use a relatively big scoop talking about what meditation. And I encourage people to try meditation on a daily basis, if not even more than that, particularly during a pandemic. Whether that's a time of silence, just a quiet time, trying to find a quiet time. And some of you are already saying, I can never find a quiet time, but even a bathroom could be a quiet time. But trying to find somewhere where you can have a quiet time or gentle reflections. And I use the term gentle reflections. If you're going to be by yourself, try to reflect gently versus harshly. Many people have quiet time, but it's a very harsh quiet time. Being very mindful of things in your life. Lots of really good research around gentle breathing and fully breathing. And I would encourage people to do is pay attention to their breathing. Inspirational readings. Sometimes it's what you're reading to inspire you. It may be a daily meditation or it may be a devotion. And for many, many people, it may be a time of prayer. So this practice will not only calm and soothe your spirit and your mind, it will actually reboot it. And often I say, it's like we got to reboot our phone, our cell phone, our batteries again. Because it almost on a daily basis is going to be drained. So meditation has so many proven benefits. You can do this during at the start of your day, during your breaks, if you have time for breaks, after a difficult period or difficult news, at lunchtime or before you go to bed is really recommended as well. The other thing is try to get out, get outside. I often call it au naturel. So really being connected to nature when we feel so disconnected on many different levels and feel like so many things are out of our control. Get connected with nature. Take every opportunity you can to sort of notice and connect with nature around us. And this good news is that we're in spring and we're in a beautiful time of year here in Niagara. So try to notice the sky and the clouds, the sun, notice the daffodils, the tulips, the forsythia. It was interesting last week with the snow that we got. In some ways, it was absolutely beautiful. I was happy to see it go by the afternoon, but it was still very, very beautiful in its own way. So really recognizing and trying to be very mindful of the nature around you, of the new growth, the buds, the dew, the sunsets. Last summer, for example, I think I watched 95% of the sunsets and found that a very, very soothing kind of strategy to help through a pandemic. Notice the birds, there are lots of birds out there now, and try to really pay attention to that and actually maybe try to get some bird feeders going or something like that. Bring fresh flowers into the house. Take a walk or a jog in a park. Good news, the parks are open again. Try to notice nature's beauty. It will take some time if you're working during the day. Take some time for outdoor breaks. Get some sunshine. Feel the sun on your skin. Even the rain that might get you really feeling or jump in the puddles. Remember the days when you would jump in the puddles? When we get to be adults, we avoid the puddles, but maybe we need to jump in them. Spend time with pets or other animals. Again, I've seen many, many people who have pets. They will say this pet, this animal, or multiple pets have got me through this pandemic, and I see the value of, so much value of pets in our lives. Big thing is that even the research shows just stroking your pet, petting your pet is good for your pet, but it's also really good for you. I have a wonderful quote, a Zen proverb someone shared with me a few weeks ago in a postcard. And it says this: you should sit in nature for 20 minutes a day. Unless you're busy, then you should sit for an hour. And I absolutely love this Zen proverb, and I'm very grateful to have received it. So you should sit in nature for 20 minutes a day. Unless you're too busy or you're busy, then you should sit for an hour. Good medicine. Going to keep going here. Establish zones. Whether you're at work or whether you're at home, try to find a zone or a place whereby if you must be stressed or work things, you keep it to a specific site. So if you're really, rather than dragging it all over the place. So you pick a chair, you pick a front step, you pick a room in your house or garage, and that's where you kind of do it. That's where you get stressed out, where you, rather than dragging it around from room to room and every place, it just kind of follows you. And the pandemic has a bit of that sense of being so overwhelming. And it's our way of trying to, what's in my control, what's not. So if I can try to line it up, try to pull it into one small area, then that's where I go. And then when I leave that area, I'm going to be okay. I know I'm going back to the start of the day, but I thought I'd throw it in. Eat a healthy breakfast. Eat all healthy meals. Start your day with a healthy boost of fruit, whole wheat cereal, grains, proteins, and milk. Many people skip this meal. I've been a social worker many years. I see many people skipping breakfast. I always get very worried that they're now going to run on fumes and run out of energy very early in the day, and that's going to spiral the day. Many people talk to me about their spiral, and that's a really interesting word. And so I'm going to go like this: is we can interrupt that spiral and be aware of how we spiral, like a snakes and ladders game. We may be much better able to adapt and adjust. So don't skip any meals. Eat healthy, eat well. I tell people I'm not a dietitian, but it's a practice that I use all the time now. And I believe that we need to look at the whole person when we're looking at well-being. And we need to look at our food intake, our physical activity, who we hang out with, all many different levels. So keep eating healthy, and perhaps particularly healthy during this pandemic. Next, routines and rituals. Many people will say it's the same day happening over and over again. And yeah, I can kind of get that. For others, they just want some stability in the middle of the storm on a life raft. And so it really varies. And this workshop is not going to be able to, this is not a set menu. You're going to have to pick from this what's going to work for you. For those of you who have the same day over and over again, you may need to add some spontaneity to that day, some uniqueness to each day in order to make it manageable for you. And for others who are completely stressed out and are juggling many things, routines and rituals I kind of compare routines and rituals to road markers or train tracks. They kind of keep us on track. So having order and predictability when we get thrown curveballs will help anchor us. They act as a cushion. So having a set morning routine of waking up, doing some meditation, doing some stretching, taking a warm shower, having the kids' lunches packed, knowing where they are, having the shoes already, having that all set will add some predictability rather than mad chaos when we already feel like things are chaotic. So having these healthy routines and rituals will really be helpful to you. And for those of you where it's boring, because I've heard that as well for many, many people, it's becoming very boring. It's hard to occupy yourself. It is really trying to add some spontaneity and some creativity in there, in your routine, because one day is flowing into the other. Ferris Bueller is the one that's been thrown out there once in a while. Another idea is, and I'll be talking about this in a few weeks for those of you who are interested in another webinar, excuse me, is I'm going to be talking about gratitude and being grateful in a pandemic. Sounds kind of odd. Actually, it's May the 13th that I'll be talking about that. But the research on gratitude is pretty spectacular in terms of its health benefits. And so, and very much in a nutshell, today we're talking about being grateful. For what are we grateful for despite the challenges, despite the fears? What am I grateful for? I'm grateful that I can still FaceTime with my grandson, who turns 1 today in Calgary, that I can still FaceTime with him for our birthday party. I'm grateful for the fact that I still can go get groceries. So trying to find some gratefulness in the storm is going to be good for your well-being. And I would encourage you to practice some gratefulness. It was a practice that I've talked about for many, many years, those of you who know me, but it's something that I'm going to talk about a bit more. People who practice gratitude, the research shows, most of this out of California, tend to be more content and at peace. They're less stressed and they live life more relaxed and they're more connected to people. So practice gratitude. Next to anchor is really pay attention to your conversation with yourself. I often say eavesdrop. Eavesdrop on yourself. What is your conversation with yourself? If you're experiencing a lot of negative and pessimistic feelings, perhaps you should be looking at how you're talking to yourself and engaging with yourself. And again, back to self-care, a lot of self-compassion language is encouraged. And that's the work of Kristen Neff, who I'm a big follower of. And I would encourage you to look up her stuff, Kristen Neff, N-E-F-F, on self-compassion, showing yourself self-compassion during these times. Yes, it's natural. So if we're back to some of the concerns, miss hugs, it's natural for a hugger who can't have hugs to miss that. But one day we'll hug again, and they'll perhaps even be more appreciative of them. So really pay attention to your self-talk, eavesdrop on yourself. If your self-talk is loaded with negativity, pessimism, intense language, and catastrophizing, you're going to experience some anxiety. Is this helpful? Is this not helpful? Is it helpful? Not helpful. What's in my control? Not in my control. So when someone tells you some news that they're going to do that, people are going to tell you the latest thing that they heard of what other people are doing. They're gathering, and what's in my control, what's not in my control. Letting go of get creative of being creative. So be creative. It's really, really good for your mind, body, and spirit. Exercising the creative side of the brain is a great way to build resilience and strength. And the recent research has shown exercising the creative side of the brain reduces depression, anxiety, stress, and even trauma, and is rewiring the brain. I'm not going to make this a presentation about rewiring the brain, but really, really good research, and the whole idea of being highly creative. What can we do? What we cannot do? For many of you, you may need some gentle encouragement or a nudge, or perhaps even a strong push to get in touch with your creative side. It's going to really be good for you. And so whether you're creative in your writing, your woodworking, you're doing puzzles, singing, gardening, I mean, I can go on and on and on, but try to be creative about being creative. It's going to be good medicine for you. It's going to be something that's going to assist you in this storm. And also try to do this, many of these practices with your children or your grandchildren, is try to give them some way to manage the storm. We may actually do this for our grandchildren. Let's go color together. We may do this with our children, but we're not doing any of that ourselves. Taking the time to either do it with them, or a family project, or as a couple even doing something together, or on your own, or doing it online with people. Get creative about how to be creative. And it's really good medicine for you. I call it use your brain or lose it. Other people say this as well. I often call this yoga for the brain, getting creative. The other one I'm going to talk very briefly about, and this could be a whole presentation on its own. I often wish they would have music therapists or music in a family health team and many other settings, because I believe music is good for the soul and the spirit. And perhaps rather than 24-hour news, we do have 24-hour music, and we should put that channel on, or our favorite stations, and listening to music. It can turn around a mood, and it can set a mood. So really pay attention to whether you need to add more music to your life, whether that's listening to it, whether that's creating it, whether that's playing, whether that's singing. I heard somebody the other day whistling in his yard, and I said to him, "It's good for you for whistling. That's good. It's good for you." It was actually neat to hear somebody whistle, or hum. I haven't heard a whole lot of humming lately, and perhaps we need to be humming. Humming is actually a really interesting, soothing strategy. We do that often we sing to our kids, but perhaps we need to sing to our babies, but maybe we need to sing to ourselves as well. So add music or more music. When you're tempted to turn on the news, perhaps turn on the music instead. And again, I don't want to say you should not have no news, but some people should have written material rather than written news, rather than the in-your-face news, which is maybe too graphic for you. Remember to breathe. Often I say to people, as the day progresses, as the news progresses, we may hold our breath. And I'm often noticing, because I'm on the phone a lot, talking to clients these days, that often it sounds like people are holding their breath. And people from trauma backgrounds sometimes hold their breath, are highly anxious, and really pay attention to your breath work. And so maybe leaving reminders to yourself during the day to do some really good breathing, and gentle breathing, 1, 2, 3, 4, or box breathing. The other thing that often I say is to all you need is love. And it's easy to get very, very upset about lots of things these days. I'm encouraging people to show compassion and love to others. It's easy to judge. It's the self-compassion material by Kristen Neff talks about compassion for others as well, as do many other theologies or religions as well as psychologies is to look at compassion. When we love deeply, we will often be less upset. And many people need to be loved deeply these days because they're hurting so much. And some of that hurt may be somewhat reduced or carried. The other things is to really look at trying to enjoy small things during your day. Try to be very, very mindful about small things. I believe to some degree, when I talk about not going too future orientated, often I try to get people to spend some time perhaps looking at what they might do when this pandemic is over, is to start to appreciate some things that they might do and make some good plans rather than forecasting negative plans. But back to more to taking enjoyment or being mindful of everyday things. So such as a clean sheets or a clean pillowcase or strawberries or a coffee. Trying to really look at it in a very, very unique way, trying to look at it like you've never seen it before, really noticing it. A warm shower on your skin, the sun on your skin, flowers in your hands, trying on it to really just try to slow down your mind and your body. I think that one of the other things before we go to the questions is one of the websites that I want to recommend to, there's lots and lots of material out there nowadays, and there's a really, really good one that I came across that was suggested to me last week that's just got tons of stuff. And that's called mindfulcompassion.com. Mindfulcompassion.com. There are many, many other things as well, but I want to start to take some questions. Before we do that, I want to continue to send the message of continue to wear your mask in terms of being safe. I think it's really important for us to continue to do that until we hear otherwise. Continue to physically distance until we hear otherwise, but still socially connect. Continue to wash your hands until we hear otherwise, and to follow the experts in the field, and also to get the vaccine. And for most of you, that may be somewhat easy, and for others is more difficult, but I would encourage you to get the vaccine. I think we'll take some questions now, if there's any questions.
Hi, Len. We haven't had any questions so far, but we have one comment. Great job, Len. Thank you for all this great information. I plan on sharing it with coworkers. So thank you to Denise for that comment. Please, we encourage you to use the chat where you can type any questions that you have for Len. We have 15 minutes to take your questions if you would like to ask any.
Thanks, Denise. I really appreciate that. Yeah, if you could share this material or things with other people, even one or two things. Often my goal when I do presentations, I got to tell you, this is my first webinar. I do not see anybody. It's very different, but I can adapt, I can adjust, and I can accept what's in my control, what's not. It's amazing how resilient I've seen people be in the last year. It's really quite remarkable how resilient and creative. And so sometimes we can tap into ourselves, parts of ourselves where we can surprise ourselves. So yes, so thank you for that comment, and being a positive person in your workplace, because I believe that's really important. Many workplaces many people are very tired, and we have to sometimes we have to be on the same boat together, still physically distancing, of course. But
we have another comment from Beth Ann, who says, "You have uplifted me. So great to see your face." We have another comment from Janice. "Will the recorded session be available for watching in the future?" Janet. Janet, to respond to your question, the answer is yes, as long as the recorded version goes successfully. This being our first webinar, we absolutely plan to offer this as a recorded session on our website. The only reason we wouldn't is if the recording through Zoom did not work. And then we have another comment from Karen. My sense through your presentation is living by the Serenity Prayer.
Yes, that's a big one. I can't think of it. I don't want to mess it up by misquoting it. Yeah, the Serenity Prayer, accepting and adapting basically is the principle. But I think it's really a big part of what I believe in as well. It's a good prayer, and maybe we need to post that.
Excellent. So thank you for that comment. We have another comment from Julie. Really enjoyed this. It not only helped me with the pandemic overload, but also additional heavy worries. Thank you.
Yeah, for some of you who are worriers, I encourage you to maybe write them down. I say many people are in their head a lot, and that's just naturally, they're just natural thinkers and feelers. So sometimes writing it down, or many times writing it down, and then, it's almost like writing, I'm just going to show you, just by writing it down and then putting it in a drawer away, it's symbolic of just kind of, it's over there. And when I need to worry about something again, I'll write it down. For some of you are writers.
Thank you, Len. Another comment is suggestions on keeping an elderly neighbor from loneliness, safe distance activities. Do you have any suggestions?
Yes, I think almost every neighborhood has a lonely elderly person. There's so many. I look at aloneness, loneliness, and isolation. I'm not sure we could actually keep somebody away from loneliness, but we can maybe keep them away from isolation and being alone. I would say perhaps a phone contact, if they don't have a computer, a phone contact, or even over the fence kind of thing, and to practice the safety measures. I see many people in my own neighborhood with lots of elderly people. And I don't know if I can take that away, but I might be able to assist in a small way. So be realistic about what you can do. And maybe give her some tools about how to manage some of that. But the fact that you're actually thinking about your neighbor is a good sign. That's compassion for others. Often I say, I wish I could make this easier for you, but I can't. So what's in my control, what I can't, what's not in my control?
Excellent. Thanks, Len. And thank you, Sarah, for that question. We have Jennifer saying, thank you, Len. Very informative and helpful. I will be using the tips that you shared. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Jennifer.
We have Marion. Most of all you said makes total sense, but there are days when I feel tired and have some of decision paralysis. I think the meditation is going to be a great tool to use.
Oh, absolutely. The decision paralysis. I think that's what you wanted to say.
Yes.
Absolutely. And give yourself permission to have those days. I think it's really important to give ourselves not just one day, but give ourselves a permission to have those days, but just decide not to stay there. Don't stay there forever. So I think that I had that a couple of weeks ago where I kind of had a funk. I had this funk. I had kept going and going. I had this funk. And I decided to give myself a permission to have a funk. And I could see the pit. I just wasn't going to go in it. I had my legs on the edge of it. I kind of use lots of metaphors. So give yourself perhaps a good sleep and a good rest and some self-compassion, take care of yourself, and then say, okay, maybe this is where I can make a better decision at that time, because it's bang, 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 bang. And so good for you for recognizing that. I would say sometimes perhaps paralysis is a good term. That's what it feels like. But often then is I just got to give myself some a decision, a physio or timeout.
Thank you, Marion, for that comment. Our last comment so far is from Betty Ann. I try to compare today to historical times of world wars or depression to make me feel better about what is going on now. I've also learned from you that I should allow my husband to keep whistling. It sometimes is annoying, but you've changed my mind.
Well, maybe he does requests. Maybe you can request a certain hum that helps Betty Ann, and that might be helpful to you, is to ask them to do requests. Can you do this one for me, please? But whistling and humming, I would encourage you to do. Yes, I think that we can learn a lot from that. I mean, I grew up in a Dutch immigrant household. My parents and grandparents were immigrants after the war. And so some of the research shows that we actually, if we have family members who have been through very, very hard times, we actually have it in our DNA, or perhaps stories, to actually manage this a little bit more. So I think that's, if those are tools that are helpful for you, then I would encourage you to use it. Anything that's helpful. What works for me, what does not work. So I think that's a wonderful strategy, actually. And I look at my own parents, where in an occupied country for 5 years. And that's where I have to go, wow, we are sort of an occupation on a different scale. This is not to minimize, but this is also not to maximize.
The last comment from Beth Ann is, I find sending love to everyone helps me through the day.
Absolutely. Love and compassion, I believe, are huge. I'm going to get through this. What I do personally is I send lots of cards and notes to people in my life. Almost every day, my wife and I have decided to do that. We're thinking of you, but also when this is over, you're coming for dinner, but you got to bring dessert. So when this is over, so you almost what I call anticipatory happiness. So I am, you plan it forward. We can't have it now, but we're going to plan for this down the road, wherever that might be. I love all these comments I'm seeing up here. Thank you very much for everybody.
Yes, thank you, everyone. We have Marian saying, this was a terrific session. Definitely worth having it on the website for sharing. Well timed, and thank you for being real.
Thank you. I'd like to think that I'm pretty real, and this feels very real. I mean, that's the thing for all of us. We may be supporting others, but we're also living it. And so this is a lived experience. And but thank you for your kind comments. I believe kind comments are good for all of us. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And we have Marilyn. I find that since I live alone, the people from the church are a great help with phone calls and cards. Absolutely.
And again, I call that paying it forward. And that's why often if you're getting those cards, send those cards as well. So I very much believe it's nice to get mail, and not just virtual mail, but also paper mail. And so I would encourage people to continue to reach out. Not everybody's going to be receptive. I don't think everybody's going to jump for joy, and some people are, but I say do it anyhow, because I believe just a good thing to do.
That's all for the comment section. We do have a few minutes if anyone has a last minute question or comment for Len.
Yes, I look forward to these questions and comments.
In the meanwhile, I will let everyone know that we do have a post-webinar survey that will appear on the screen when you leave the workshop, as well as in an email in follow-up to the event. So we just ask that you complete the survey. It only takes about a minute, and it helps us understand your experience and helps us shape future workshops as well.
Yeah, back to the decision paralysis, if I could just mention that. I believe that we have to give ourselves permission to be tired and exhausted, and time to reboot, and if we can. I think that I'm really glad that someone shared that, because it's really difficult to do that sometimes when we're bombarded. But I believe we can do it, but it's difficult.
It looks like a couple more comments to wrap up. We have from Gail, thank you, well done, reconfirming. We have Marilyn, thanks, Len. I really appreciated your talk. We have Barbara, this works for me / this doesn't work for me is very helpful.
Can I just mention one thing with that? Yeah, so really often simply doing this. Is it helpful or is it not helpful? So we look at, sometimes people want to tell you about what's happening in California, what's happening in Michigan, what's happening in, is this, what can I do about it? what can I do about it? Is this helpful to me? This is not helpful to me. And so sometimes talking to Aunt Edna, I pick on Aunt Edna, for 2 hours at night because she's alone, but you may need to say to her, this is not helpful to me. I can't talk to you for 2 hours before bedtime because I don't sleep till 4 o'clock. She may be upset about it, but maybe she's feeling better because she just vented, but you're not. But I think we have to have some what I call gentle assertiveness under the umbrella of compassion for ourselves, and perhaps even compassion for her, is that we need to set some boundaries. So even with our friends who are also, and coworkers who are also struggling with this pandemic, is to set limits and boundaries and say, I can't hear that right now because I'm still dealing with this. I'd love to hear that maybe another time, but right now it's too much.
Thanks, Len. The second part of Barbara's comment is, and also a way of saying no to things. I don't have to explain why I don't want to go and do something.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Sometimes we feel like we got to give full explanations to people, and perhaps sometimes that's appropriate to do so. But many, many times right now is to say, well, I call it a good no. It's a healthy no. Many people thought that were raised, not many, some people were raised that a no is not good. But I say there's a healthy no and a healthy yes.
From Betty, we have, thank you so much. It was very helpful. We have from Beth Ann, thank you, love and peace. We have from Marilyn, thank you. There is an Aunt Edna in my life and you just gave me the answer.
Yeah, I often bring up, when I do presentations, I often bring up Edna because almost everybody has one, perhaps even more. And they may be an aunt, they may be a relative. Often we talk about family support, but sometimes our families are not very supportive. So often then it is about setting some boundaries and some limits. Sometimes there's somebody in the neighborhood, sometimes there's somebody at work. I pick on Aunt Edna, but you could all imagine her.
Lastly, from Jennifer, we have, I love the this is helpful / not helpful way of thinking. I think it will help me to be more positive, especially during the pandemic.
Beautiful. I love it. I love that.
I think that's a great comment to wrap up the session on. And looking at the time, I just want to thank everyone for your participation and for your comments and your questions. And thank you, Len, for doing this presentation for all of us.
Thanks very much, everybody. Take care of yourselves.
Thanks. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.